Shivani Gupta. As the IT surveys at BBC offices in Mumbai and the national capital continue for a third straight day without a break, a mega narrative war has erupted in the country. Now, weeks after India banned the circulation of BBC's two-part documentary on Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar has warned of global news houses pushing fake narratives. Terming the dumping of information as a new form of invasion, the Vice President said doctored narratives cannot be allowed to hamper India's growth. The VP was addressing probationers of the Indian Information Service and asked them to be vigilant about untrue narratives designed to undermine India's global rise. He stressed that time is of the essence in countering these dubious and motivated information war against India. The opposition has been critical of the Modi-led government for allegedly being dictatorial and not allowing differences of opinion. They were also up in arms, for example, when IT officials reached the BBC offices 2 days ago, terming it an attack on democracy in India and a bid to muzzle media. Remember, from time to time, BBC, for example, has faced flack from many in India and for decades in India for repeated biased or derogatory coverage. Their stance is usually anti-India, which is to say on issues, for example, of Pak-born terror or Kashmir. Their coverage is often against Indian interests. Similarly, there are many publications that routinely surmise on India what is good, what is bad, what should happen. And mostly these are opinions masquerading as facts without much understanding on India or Indians themselves. So is it not time that Indians become a little bit more critical in their analysis of such reports to separate what is actually a report from propaganda and vested interests? Remember, there's always a geopolitical aspect also attached to what foreign media says on any country, not just India. Are we moving in that direction though? What do we need to do to educate our masses more on how information coming from outside should be critically analyzed? We'll take those questions to our guests in just a bit. But first up, without mincing words, the Vice President raised the misinformation invasion alarm, and here are some of the top 5 statements that do trigger a larger debate. So attack number 1, he said there's a need to counter, quote, sinister designs against India's growth story. And as India becomes, one of the largest major economies, fastest growing major economies, that is something that's a concern that many have voiced, both in India and overseas. Attack number 2, there are doctored narratives and they cannot be allowed to run down India. Attack 3, dumping of information is another way of invasion. I personally feel this is one of the most critical statements the VP has made, and we'll debate that further. He said we have to boldly neutralize misinformation invasion, nothing wrong in that. He was also addressing the information officers, so it was more topical for them. He said misinformation cannot be allowed in the name of freedom of expression, and that's a debate we've held for a long time. His main point is there are forces inimical to India. We need to battle motivated biased news that seeks to set the agenda of what should or should not happen in India, but by people sitting abroad. Here are few instances when Western media chose to attack what is very much an Indian system or what has happened in India, which has come under question. So, of course, the latest is the BBC docu-series, which harped on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's role in 2002 Gujarat riots, without even a mention of the fact that he's been given a clean sheet from India's top court twice. In 2021, you would remember, New York Times had claimed that India's COVID death number and the toll is much higher than reported. But the entire analysis was done on estimates, based on randomly selected numbers. It does not really explain why or how these estimates were made. Time magazine in 2019, for example, called the sitting Prime Minister, who was also the incumbent, India's divider-in-chief on its cover story. What's important about this is the fact that it came out in the midst of the general elections in 2019. So what's the message that is being sent? Of course, I've left out a lot of such editorials that have been done because it's not so much about opinion alone. It is about what is presented as a report and factually based reports versus what is propaganda. So the big question we're debating today, as the Vice President Dhankar slams court doctored narratives, is it not time to put India first? How do we do that is also a big question.
This is another way of invasion. We cannot allow free fall of doctored narratives to run down our growth story. India is on the rise. Sinister designs are there to set afloat a narrative by free fall of information. We have to be alert.
Hypocrisy, even a small writer put up for Modi ji, truth is revealed and then they say that is anti-national. For same BBC news broadcast, Mr. Modi used to appreciate. They don't tolerate the truth.
Let's go across to the guest joining us. Ikram Sandhu is Congress spokesperson. The BJP has declined to be part of this debate. Abhijit Majumdar, First Post consulting editor. Veena Sikri is former diplomat. She was also a signatory against the recent BBC documentary. Adit Kothari is Indic Society founder. He's based in London. I want to begin with Ikram Sandhu. What is wrong with what the Vice President has talked about? For example, if you talk about just the BBC itself, in the 1970s, Indira Gandhi banned the BBC. She didn't like the coverage and the way the BBC presented India. Congress members, representatives, leaders were writing letters of how BBC should not be allowed to function in India. We've come some way from them, from that time, but the concerns remain. Do you find any objections in what the Vice President has said?
Good evening, Shivani. A very warm good evening to my co-panelist and to all your viewers. You know, Shivani, we always hark back to what happened in the 70s. Fair enough. But then a country always progresses if it looks forward. If you drive by looking in the rearview mirror, you will never have a speed more than 20 kilometers per hour. That is applicable to an automobile. That is applicable to a nation. So if we have to grow, we have to come out of the siege mentality that this current dispensation is in. Till the time something is written positive about them, everything is gung-ho. He goes to Houston, in a stage-managed program, there is Vavai. So he becomes the Vishwa Guru and the whole Vishwa is following the Vishwa Guru. And suddenly one documentary, which is critical of him, and the whole world has ganged up against him. So this is something like a kindergarten kid will behave like that. A responsible government which heads the biggest democracy in the world should not behave like that. And this is what we really take umbrage to, because it is showing India as a class bully which cannot take any criticism, be it constructive, be it destructive. That's a different thing. We can debate that also. But in the world space, what it is coming out is that India has become an intolerant country with an intolerant government and a very intolerant prime minister.
Ikram, I kind of agree with what you're saying. You have to take the good with the bad. I don't have any disagreement on that. But we will discuss whether these criticisms are fair or are they agenda setting and motivated propaganda. Secondly, the question also is that, you look at these, for example, you look at some of this critique. It started even before he became Prime Minister, right? Even in 2014, this critique started, and the same critique is going on till ahead of 2024. So have you formed your opinion? Did you form your opinion even before you could judge him as a Prime Minister? Are you forming your opinion on the basis of what is happening in India, or it's a prejudged situation? That's the question.
This is for me, Shivani?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'll take that. Look, Shivani, if you can't take the heat, don't stand in the kitchen. You're the Prime Minister of the country, for crying out loud. What is it that any criticism is an attack on the government, is an attack on the nation, it is anti-national, and there is this cabal of world powers which are just, doing something so that India can be shown down. And if Modi there's a criticism of Mr. Modi, it's a criticism of the whole nation. The country is much bigger. Prime ministers come, prime ministers go. And that is the bottom line.
Okay.
Now, if there is any documentary, let's say we talk about the 2002 riots, they have come up with certain facts. You go against those facts. We respect it that, yes, our courts have exonerated him. Then I can hold the same argument against Mr. Modi. He raved and rant in the parliament about Bofors, about 2G. In both the courts have exonerated everybody. Then he is the Indian version of the BBC.
Okay.
No, you can't have it that, if it is in my left hand, I accept it. And if it is in my right hand, I do not accept it.
Okay,
no,
fair enough. Can I open this up to the rest of our guests now? Abhijit, Ikram has a point. There's a lot of good coverage, a lot of praise, a lot of critical analysis of India's growth story and what's really, let's say what Prime Minister Narendra Modi represents in India, that is also done. So we have to take the good with the bad. We cannot call all criticism doctored.
Shivani, can you cite one other prime minister about whom negative reports have been coming out since 2002? Every single day till now. Let us go through the reports in Washington Post, New York Times, BBC, Al Jazeera. Let's take all of them from COVID. Every single day they have hit out at Modi. Now to say that Narendra Modi has reacted is intolerant. What about those reports? Those reports, if you add them, it will go from Earth to Pluto. Yeah, I mean, it'll form a whole paper trail from Earth to Pluto. If you look at the kind of criticism that has happened in media against Narendra Modi, so this is not even a point. Second is the BBC action against BBC is not on the basis of narrative setting. Because, and everybody is, absolutely in their rights to criticize and look at the narrative setting that BBC and other Western media has been doing. However, the action that has been taken against them is about transfer pricing and serious financial stuff. So you cannot, this whole thing of crying wolf and, playing the victim when it comes to scrutiny of your own house, invoking freedom of press and whatever, this doesn't wash. Okay. So if you're clean, then come clean.
No, I'm not linking the IT survey per se. I don't want to link the IT survey per se to what we are discussing.
So I'm
Let's not do that.
Linking it.
Yeah.
However, it is true that there is, earlier colonization was about land. Now colonization is of information. Colonies are being built on information. Now, why is the American Senate hearing day
Twitter
after
and
day
tech,
about how big tech interfered in politics? From Gulf War onwards, information has been used and media has been actually not just complicit. I mean, it has been one of the main players, pushing the agenda of, first weapons of mass destruction basis, which America and its allies attacked Iraq. So, and that was I would say the beginnings of the information war. It has become much larger, far more insidious right now.
Okay.
And the media company, the media outlets will have to sort of account for that. There will be, you can whitewash your mainstream media with whatever they want, but on social media and other, more democratic platforms, these questions will be raised.
Okay.
What are you doing? What is the BBC doing when India just became the president of G20?
Okay, fair enough. But can I add one thing, Abhijit, on what you were saying? I want to go across to Veena Sikri also, because the vice president also said, I think what he has talked about information war or dumping of information, because in this day and age, sometimes too much information is also a problem. But he has also said that everything can be whitewashed and can go down the drain if people are not vigilant against such tendency. He questioned some of these agencies that have large world reputations. For example, the weapons of mass destruction theory in the past to attack a country. Those reputations have failed humanity in recent years, he said. How come Indian mind immediately absorbs something does not analyze what if you compare vicious mechanism designed to afloat a narrative to run down the growth story of this country, all in the name of freedom of expression. So I think he's raising a question also that you look at the past record of some of these so-called global media houses, they really don't have the pedestal to preach anybody. Veena Sikri. Veena ji, can you hear me? That question was for you. I'm not.
Is it for me? No.
Yes, that
Hello?
was for you. If you heard me, please go ahead.
Hello. Is that for me? The question is for me.
Can we try and sort out that line with Veena Sikri?
Yes,
Maybe there's
I'm
a
here now.
lag.
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, ma'am.
Hello, can you hear me?
Let's try and fix that.
Hello.
Why doesn't Adit take that question? You're also based in London. You're looking at a lot of these reports that are written about India, what the narrative about Hinduism, Hindutva, militant Hindutva party, this, that, nationalist Hinduism, etc., etc. And then, of course, there are countless other things. But on point of what I mentioned as well, you look at the track record of some of these global houses, they're very sanctimonious when they preach to India. And I think that's what is beginning to irritate people here.
That's correct, Swati. I mean, representing the diaspora, I must admit that most of us, as part of the diaspora, feel extremely disgruntled and dissatisfied with the opposition in India, the irresponsibility that they have demonstrated in all of this saga. They seem to be stuck in this constant and confused loop. And that loop is essentially how to impede the growth of BJP and Narendra Modi. And this is causing immense loss, not only to their own cause, but also by supporting institutions like the BBC. They are failing to take cognizance from their own mistakes. The disinformation that was disseminated with regards to the 2002 riots only benefited the BJP in 2014. A lot of us may recall that. So they should in fact support the BJP and question those tainted individuals with questionable backgrounds who have produced this hit job. People like Mr. Vardarajan, who have called 84 riots a Hindu-Sikh issue, Susanna Arundhati Roy, who have essentially supported an armed struggle against separatists, who supported the armed struggle of the separatists against the Union of India. Supporting them, they're only hurting their own chances in 2024 and bolstering that of the BJP. As far as this particular tax survey goes, the general consensus of the people of India and the diaspora explicitly is well done, Government of India, because you are taking on big bully corporations who've called Jai Shri Ram a provocative slogan, who've called Indian Army a violative, but the Syrian Islamists a moderate, Burhan Wani as a freedom fighter, and the terrorists who jumped on the ship on the boat and came to Bombay in 2008, they called them gunmen instead of terrorists. So they've always demonstrated this shoddy attitude towards India, and their journalism has always treaded on this path to malign India as a civilizational state. I mean, a lot of people will not realize and not remember, but Subhash Chandra Bose had essentially said on Azad Hind Radio that BBC is the bluff and bluster corporation of India. So I'm glad that this government is actually taking on these bully corporations.
Yeah,
Thank you.
actually, it's not actually known maybe 75 years post-independence, but the kind of views that British government, for example, a lot of noted British authors, politicians, society, thought leaders have had on quote-unquote Indians and quote-unquote Hindus. If you read about that, it's absolutely appalling. And one really needs to question if some of those mindsets are being carried down, because just the tone and tenor in which sometimes India and Indians are referred with, you would remember that famous cartoon also that showed India knocking on the door of the, space club with a cow in hand and all of that. I mean, it is derogatory. But I want to bring in Veena Sikri. Ma'am, can you hear me clearly?
Yes,
if
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah,
Yes,
if you can,
yes.
your comments on what the Vice President has said. Very importantly, he's saying there's an information dump. And this is a new form of invasion. He's using that word, which is very, very serious.
Well, actually, I must say that I fully agree with what the Vice President has said. And it is very significant that he said it while he was addressing 3 batches of probationers of the Indian Information Service. And in the future career of these young officers, they are going to face this. They're going to face this information war, and they have to decide how to tackle it. So this misinformation campaign, the disinformation campaign, this used to be very much prevalent in war times, but now in peace times, to attack economies, and with the help of social media and all kinds of information and communication networks, this kind of warfare is being unleashed on all countries to assert or to keep up the superiority of the so-called West. And they cannot take it that now, for example, the economy of India has surpassed that of the UK. And in PPP terms, we are already the purchasing power parity terms, we are already the 3rd largest economy in the world. So now, I've seen that some of your panelists are saying, no, but why are we responding? And so, but it is very important that we take a considered view on each such attack, and we decide how and when we should respond. On the BBC documentary, it was definitely a hit job, completely one-sided, completely ignoring what the Supreme Court of India has said, and in fact pretending that the Supreme Court's judgment did not even exist. I mean, what more misinformation and disinformation can you spread that after considering the whole matter for several years, the Supreme Court has come to a considered decision exonerating Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and you, in making a documentary 20 years after the event, do not want to even mention the case. This shows the biased minds. Yeah. This shows that you're trying to influence people against the Prime Minister of India, and I think if that is the case, then certainly, every institution in India, so the Indian Information Service probationers or government or media should come together and call a spade and say that we will not, as a country, accept such a disinformation campaign.
Okay.
And I
can
think
I ask you, what seems to be coming out is 2 things. One is that the Western media, at least sections of it, are very, very vehemently anti-Modi. Do you believe that is the case? And if so, why? And the second is, to play the devil's advocate, should we believe that the West is so anti-India, or there are pockets of this so-called Western press that are very anti-India? What reasons would they have on both these issues?
You see, I think one has to see this at different level. Now, if we take it at the level of heads of government, presidents and prime ministers, certainly we've seen a huge wave of support for Prime Minister Modi. Just yesterday, when the announcement of the Tata purchase of aircraft, Boeing and Airbus, we saw statements put out by President Joe Biden himself, by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, by President Emmanuel Macron, all supporting Prime Minister Modi and saying what a big contribution this purchase by India is going to be, of course, to the economy of India, but also to the economy of these countries. So Indian purchases are fueling economic growth.
But why are they considered anti-Modi? Why do you think so? The Western media is anti-Modi.
Yes, so this is at the Prime Minister's level. But when you come to the media, you do have a strong left liberal media, which seems to, absolutely specialize in criticizing Prime Minister Modi and creating absolute hatchet jobs against him. The Washington Post, the New York Times, the BBC, the Economist. I mean, they have been relentless for the last 14 years.
No, I think that's right. Relentless is quite the apt word to use, because as I mentioned, a lot of the judgment on Prime Minister Narendra Modi came even before he became Prime Minister. You didn't even wait to see what his performance was. I have 2 minutes left. I'll give a minute each to Ikram and Abhijit. Ikram, one of the points that our panelists made is that it is actually detrimental to the Congress, one of the largest and the oldest political parties in the country, to be seen more with these narrative setters than with India. Don't you think that Congress is also treading the wrong path in your fight against Modi and BJP? There should be a line you should draw when it comes to India.
They say that India is the, mothership of democracy and things like that. That is what the current dispensation says. And then what do they say? That the whole Western media is against us. Which are the kind of countries which come up with excuses like this? North Korea, China, Iran, Afghanistan, Syria. So they want India to join that line. Come on, be a strong nation. No media can ever make you. No media can ever break you. If you do good work, it will be recognized. If there are skeletons in the cupboard, they will come out. Okay. You cannot do cherry picking the way this current government does. That in 2013, the Prime Minister says that Kashwani koi nahi sunta. दूरदर्शन कोई नहीं सुनता, गांव में सारे बीबीसी सुनते हैं क्योंकि बीबीसी की क्रेडिबिलिटी है, जो वो खबर देता है वो सही होती है. 2023 BBC is a bakwas corporation. That is what this current dispensation says. There is the right cases
but can I
against
just
Mr.
say,
Modi.
I get your point,
He
but I
raves
think
and rants about it.
there is the question over that
Finish, let me
credibility
finish
that
one
has
point.
been built by some of these global media houses. Does
I'll
that
just finish.
credibility
I'll just
still
finish.
stay, or has it been eroded? Is a question. Okay, finish, please.
Please, just 30 seconds, Shivani, please, just indulge me there. The Prime Minister and all the surrogates say that because the Supreme Court has exonerated the Prime Minister, nothing can be put on record as far as the 2002 record is concerned. Fair games, let that be. Then why does the Prime Minister and the Parliament brings up Bofors? When in 2012, the same Supreme Court has exonerated everybody, closed all case and said no kickbacks were ever paid in Bofors.
Okay, fair enough. I think you made that point. I take that point of yours.
Yes.
You cannot play it both ways. Abhijit, I have a final minute left. One of the things that I'm also trying to understand, and I have paucity of time, so I request you to be brief. What can be done? Because the Vice President is also saying, why does the Indian mind accept foreign information so easily? Do you think something, is this a normal process that will eventually take care of itself?
I don't
or
think
should
the
we
Indian
do
mind...
something?
No, I don't think the Indian mind any longer accepts this kind of information very easily. I don't think they given. In fact, nobody has even watched the BBC documentary. It would have actually sunk like a stone if the BJP didn't want it to be in the in public domain and being discussed and regurgitate the memory of 2002 and the hounding of Modi since. But as for the credibility of the BBC, the conservative MPs during Thatcher's time used to call it the Bolshevik Broadcasting Corporation. It still is one of the most important tools of the global Western left, and which is why it has, and because it's unfortunate that the global West had to ally with radical Islam, globally. Which is why we see the kind of coverage about Pakistan, about Palestine. So it has been always anti-Israel, anti-India, and it is still playing out.
Okay.
But in this case, they have actually gifted the BJP with a fantastic opportunity.
Well, we'll leave it at that. I've run out of time. Who this benefits is a separate question, but does India need to be wary of what is happening, especially when it comes to quote-unquote doctored narratives, is what we tried to discuss. But speaking of the BBC documentary, Indian Youth Congress has knocked the Supreme Court's doors, challenging the ban on the airing and the linked circulation of the documentary on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The petition also raises security of press as income tax raids or surveys are being conducted at the BBC offices. My colleague Ananya is joining us. Ananya, very quickly, could you tell us what more does the petition say and when does it come up for hearing?
Well, it's a fresh petition that has been filed before the topmost court of the country through the IYC's, that is Indian Youth Congress's legal cell, which clearly goes on to say that there is a hit on the independence of the freedom of press, as we are seeing raids on the BBC offices not only in Delhi but also in Bombay. Apart from that, what has also been said is various judgments have been cited with regards to free speech, and a specific prayer has been made that first of all, the ban on this particular documentary, which was imposed by the central government under emergency provisions, should be removed. Other prayer that is being made is that the documentary should be aired, and the government should ensure that wherever this documentary is being aired, or if a public airing of this particular documentary is taking place, then there is no kind of a law and order situation that arises into this particular matter. Now, what has come to light is that these petitions that are there before the topmost court of the country, there are a batch of petitions. Once they say that the ban has to be taken off from this, all of those petitions, whether we talk of the petition filed by Mr. M.L. Sharma or the other petitions that have been filed by Prashant Bhushan, in fact Mahua Mohitra as well, all of these petitions are before the topmost court of the country, but this new petition is still under defects, and as soon as the defects are cured, the matter would be listed. We might also see that there is urgent mentioning of
several petitions filed against the government's move. What happens? We'll wait and see. Moving on to the other big story that we're tracking. Assam's war on child marriage continues. More than 3,000 people have already been arrested by the police so far. The Assam police has registered the case on many under the POCTO Act. where the age of the bride was under 14 years. This has invited some piercing questions from the Gauhati High Court. The court doubted the legality of the POCSO Act being applied here. Assam is one of the worst performers on the indices such as maternal mortality rate and infant mortality. This move by the government of cracking down on child marriages aims to target what they believe is the root cause of this issue. The crackdown began earlier this month when over 4,000 child marriage cases were registered. The opposition has alleged that under the guise of this crackdown, the government is actually targeting Muslims. Earlier, while speaking exclusively with CNN News 18, Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma had cleared that the crackdown is not against one community and they were only targeting people who have violated the law. As the crackdown on child marriages continues in Assam, the police is now setting up additional prison facilities to house the accused. Overall, more than 3,000 people have already been arrested as far as this crackdown is concerned. 93 of them are actually women. 4,000 plus child marriage cases have been registered and over 8,000 accused have been named in various FIRs. Here is how men are being charged by Assam police in their crackdown against these marriages. So men who have married girls below 14 years of age are being charged with the POCSO Act. Men who have married girls between 14 to 18 are being charged with the Child Marriage Act section. But the Gauhati High Court questioned the application of the POCSO Act while granting anticipatory bail to some people booked under the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act. The court said allegations are serious, they're not preventing the agencies from probing, but they also questioned rape allegations, calling them weird. What is the POCSO charge here? The court questioned. They added, merely because POCSO is added, does it mean that judges will not see what is there? The court also observed that this is causing havoc in the private life of people. Child marriage is bad, but should all be arrested, the court asked. They said these matters do not require custodial interrogation. That was one of the reasons why they granted bail. And they also told the agencies, if you find someone guilty, file a charge. Now, these observations are a matter of discussion because in 2017, the Supreme Court was very clear that sex with a minor wife is also rape. Here's what they said, that sex with minor wife, despite consent, is rape. Girl below 18 cannot be treated as a commodity. She has right to deny sexual intercourse with her husband. Rights are very much alive whether she is married or not. And a child remains a child whether she is married or not. So given that, the question we ask is slapping POCSO in these crackdowns on child marriages right or excessive? Joining us on the show is Pramod Swami, who's Assam BJP spokesperson, Sujata Paul of the Congress Party. They've questioned the crackdown in the past. Mrinalini Deshmukh is senior Supreme Court advocate who's also joining us on the show. Going across to Mrinalini first, given that the Supreme Court has said in the past that if you have sex with your minor wife, married or not, this is, illegal. Do you feel that the Assam government is right in invoking charges under POCSO for cases where the girl is under 14 and rape, etc., as far as this child marriage crackdown is concerned?
At the outset,
Hello.
the intent behind attacking... hello, can you hear me?
I can, go ahead.
The intent behind cracking down the child marriages and bringing an end to it, because under the existing law, child marriages are not valid marriages, and obviously there is a Child Marriage Restraint Act which is applicable in our country. But the manner in which the government is going and treating them as criminals is something which I am not in favor of, number one. And number two, as you were just saying at the commencement of your this show, that there have been several cases where even the courts have held, in the Assam court has held, that can you apply certain draconian things like a POCSO in a case of a child marriage against the persons who are the members of the family in which a child marriage has been given. Because POCSO, the aim and objective of POCSO is different from what what could be in a child marriage. So there is a difference between the two, the understanding of what is sexual assault or a sexual on the child or on a minor as far as POCSO is concerned, and as far as the child marriage is concerned. Thirdly, and more importantly, when we are talking about having a control over this, there has to be a method, and there has to be a method in the madness also, as they always say. And it could be done, as the court have said, you register an FIR, you do the investigation, you do find out what things are happening, but this cannot mean that you can take such harsh and such kind of heavy sort of action against people where the wrong that they have committed is a civil wrong. It is not a criminal wrong. A Child Marriage Restraint Act is a civil law, correct, where a child, a girl under the age of 18 and a boy under the age of 21 cannot get married. But when this is what the situation is, how is it that you are applying criminal law for the purposes of achieving what the goal is? That is where I find a little disconnect in which the government or the authorities, as I would like to put it, are dealing with this issue. But otherwise, having said this, I truly believe that this, in a way, a pressure to stop child marriage is a good thing. A little arm twisting is good, but not the extent to which it is happening. Just to
so you're saying that maybe as a deterrent you do need crackdowns and you do need to come down hard on child marriages, but maybe the application of POCSO wasn't right. The court also questioned rape. I'm guessing that was in context of POCSO only. But let me go across to Pramod Swami, who's joining us. Pramod Swami, you've heard what the lawyer on the panel is also saying. The Gauhati High Court also raised these questions. I should say that they're not really orders, but these are observations the court made while looking at bail applications of some of the accused. So, isn't the Assam government going overboard? Isn't the Assam government going overboard?
देखिए ऐसा है कि कोर्ट जो है समय समय पे ऑब्जर्वेशन देता है
जी बोलिए
और तो ये कोर्ट की अपनी एक प्रक्रिया है, निश्चित तौर पे कार्य करती है। हेलो,
आप अपनी बात एक बार दोबारा बोलेंगे प्रमोद स्वामी जी, बोलिए।
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
जी जी बोलिए।
Hello. Can you hear me? Hello. Hello.
I can hear you, Pramod Swami.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Not sure what I can do here, but let me go across to Sujata Paul of the Congress Party. Sujata Paul, what also, is a question that sometimes the opposition gets as far as these cases are concerned is that one, you earlier made it about Muslims, even though the facts and the figures and the data show that virtually all of those arrested or accused, it's divided 50-50 between Hindus and Muslims. So you communalize the issue to begin with. Some parties continue to do this in Assam till today. And then there are questions always raised and not, it kind of communalizes or politicizes the issue instead of looking at what the government is trying to do.
You have to decide whether you want to call it communalizing or politicizing. Now,
it can be both at times.
No, it is not. Yes, so you can decide on what you want to ask me about. But let me tell you that we are a political party, and politics is not about dirty politics only, which is called politicizing. It is also about politicizing issues for the betterment of society. Now, whenever there are societal issues, and this is a civil matter, marriage is not a criminal matter. So when you compare, marriage and sex in marriage and bring in POCSO into it, then there are questions which are bound to be raised. Because if you look at the statistics, 3,041 people, including 93 women, have been arrested since February 3. 4,074 cases registered and 8,000 people have been named. Now, in society, whenever you have to bring change, you must remember that people who are uneducated, they are the ones who will probably do something which will not benefit them also. If there is child mortality and, infant mortality and mothers also dying during childbirth, we must remember that it is education and awareness which should be undertaken. People need to be educated. You can't just bring a law and impose it on them, and that is the problem that we have. So even if it means a large number of a particular community is getting targeted, we do have a problem with that. But in addition to that, it could be across communities. We have a problem with a law which is brought in without thinking through. Wasn't there a child marriage restraint act earlier? It is there. So the thing is that people need to be educated about it. The fear of the law should be there. We all agree to it. Nobody wants child marriages in the country. But in addition to that, you must also understand the societal pressures which are happening and how to counter them. It is the job of the government.
But the child marriage has been outlawed in India for quite some time. And according to some of the recent data that I saw, nearly 20% I think of Indian girls are still getting married under the age of 18. So the problem continues to prevail at a pretty high level. In Assam, the problem is even above the national average. What is wrong if the Assam government is acting on this? Because sometimes people don't listen unless they know that there will be legal issues for them. Otherwise, it is business as usual.
No, Shivani, see, the problem is we live in a society and we live in a civil society. So there are laws. So if there are laws, why do we have laws? So that people fear the law and people become aware of the law.
Yes.
But it is always the marginalized communities and across religions. So let's not get religion only into it. Across communities, wherever there is poverty, there's lack of education, people do, certain things which don't benefit them. In fact, they harm them.
Okay,
like
but can I just say that I don't think today people don't know that it is illegal. People are willfully defying, because this campaign to not have child marriages has run in India for several decades, and this cannot be an excuse in perpetuity. But Pramod Swami is with us. I lost the line with him earlier. Pramod Swami, the question the Assam government is facing today कि आप कुछ ज्यादा ही जबरदस्ती कर रहे हो लोगों के साथ, चाइल्ड मैरिजेस पे आप अटैक कर रहे हो, वो एक चीज है, लेकिन आप बहुत स्ट्रिक्ट एक्शंस ले रहे हो और लोगों को अरेस्ट कर रहे हो, पॉक्सो का एक्ट लगा रहे हो, रेप के चार्जेस लगा रहे हो, वो सही नहीं है इन केसेस में. प्रमोद स्वामी.
पोस्को एक्ट 2012 ये तो हम लेके नहीं आए, ये यूपीए की सरकार में जो कानून बना था उस कानून को.
So you don't implement laws without thinking them.
तो यूपीए सरकार ने फिर इसको पास किया.
ओके, प्रमोद जी, आपकी ना आवाज सही से नहीं आ रही है. क्या आपको लगता है कि पॉक्सो लगाना गलत था? पॉक्सो का एक रीजन है, उसकी एक वैल्यू है, लेकिन इन केसेस में क्या पॉक्सो लगाना गलत था? जस्ट बिकॉज इट एग्जिस्ट डजंट मीन यू कैन अप्लाई इट हियर. कोर्ट ने भी यही सवाल पूछा है.
को जो करना चाहिए सरकार वो कर रही है, और ये पोस्को एक्ट 2012 जो है.
Shivani, can I come in?
One second. Unfortunately, we are losing that line with him again and again. But Mrunalini, I have a final question to ask you also. You know, I debated this child marriage issue not so long ago. The problem that has also been identified as far as the Child Marriages Act is concerned, that actually doesn't, do anything to tackle the problem. Children can get married. They're often, made to get married by their families. Unless it's illegal, but they're also not void. Unless one of the minors at the age of 18 declares it void, it can also continue, but it is also illegal. Don't you think this entire act only is a little convoluted? How do you act against it?
Sujata, according to me, the point that is very important is that the Child Marriage Restraint Act is an act which prohibits children's marriages, and children who are below the age of 18 for a girl and 21 as far as the boy is concerned. The question that arises is that when you go for the registration of that marriage, the age will be taken into consideration. Now there are so many so-called marriages that take place. They take place in temples, they take place in home, they take place in other venues also. Now these marriages, there is no count of it, there is no accountability, there are no number of cases which have been sort of mentioned that these are the marriages. What are the marriages that we know of? Those which are registered. If I have to work on a statistics, it will be these are the number of marriages that have been worked on. Secondly, the issue about the Child Marriage Restraint Act comes in the event that marriage has to be annulled or it has to end into a termination of the legal relationship. At that point of time, we face quite a few issues in the courts when we deal with it. When we say at the time of marriage the girl was under 18. So what are the provisions as far as that law is concerned? So that is tested in a court of law. When the marriage goes south or the relationship is broken and it goes to a competent court for its ideal sort of way of tackling with it. But what I agree with you is that why can we not stop the child marriage?
Exactly.
The question here is, can I tell you something which is a matter of fact? I can tell you something as a matter of fact that in Rajasthan, the child marriages are rampant even today. And the cops from Rajasthan attend those weddings. So, I mean, what else do you want? I mean, this is the kind of blatant disregard to the law of child marriages because they feel that their customs override what the law is.
No, but
Now,
is the
this
law
will take
giving
some
the
time for
power
them to be
to the agencies, the police, to actually act on them? The power is not there. Unless you
point here
criminalize
is
it, there will be
the
no
power
deterrent.
is not there. Exactly. It's a civil. It is a civil law, and Child Marriage Restraint Act is a civil law. If it is civil law, only the civil proceedings are applicable in terms of its annulment, divorce, or in terms of
then how do you stop this practice, which we all universally believe is wrong?
But then you need to amend that act to make it a criminal thing.
Exactly.
In the existing situation, it is not there. So if you want to make it effective, and I'm all for it, I'm not opposing it, but then you need to bring about the changes and not amend to the effect that you sort of levy cases of POXO and all against it. I mean, this is taking it to the next level, which is absolutely unacceptable. But amend the law, make it a deterrent, make it something which
or
is,
can you
which will
apply
be
a law
effective
which
in
exists
the,
but maybe
in a
not for
social
this
sector.
purpose, but employ it to be more forceful against these allegations? Pramod Swami is back with us. Let me try. I have limited time to get a reaction from him. Pramod Swami, how will you defend the government? लोग कह रहे हैं कि आप बहुत ज्यादा स्ट्रिक्ट एक्शन कर रहे हैं और लोगों को प्रताड़ित कर रहे हैं.
नहीं, देखिए, जो 2012 में जो पोस्को एक्ट बना था यूपीए के समय में, उसी पोस्को एक्ट का हमने यहाँ में इस्तेमाल किया है. और देश में जो संविधान है, देश में जो कानून है, अगर उसका पालन करना अगर गलत है तो फिर इस पे हमें कुछ बोलने की आवश्यकता नहीं है, क्योंकि अगर देश में अगर कानून को आप फॉलो नहीं करेंगे तो फिर इस तरह की जो चाइल्ड मैरिज जो है उसको रोकना काफी मुश्किल हो जाएगा. अब कोर्ट ने कहीं ऑब्जर्वेशन दिया है, लेकिन उन्होंने कोई निश्चित ऑर्डर इसमें नहीं दिया है. तो कोर्ट अपना ऑब्जर्वेशन दे रहा है, लेकिन कोर्ट ने ये नहीं कहा कि आप कार्रवाई को रोक दीजिए. तो कहीं कोर्ट का ऑब्जर्वेशन है, जिसका हम स्वागत करते हैं और हम इस बात को मानते हैं कि चाइल्ड मैरिज एक्ट के जो है उसको रोकने के लिए सरकार को अवेयरनेस के साथ साथ में कानूनी जो उसका दायित्व है, संविधान का जो दायित्व है, उस दायित्व का भी पालन करना पड़ेगा. क्योंकि जो टीन एज में जो हमारी जो बच्चियों की जो मृत्यु हो रही है, उसका जो रेशियो आसाम में जो है वो 60.80% है, लगभग 17%. तो टीन एज में अगर इस तरह हमारी बच्चियों की मृत्यु होगी 18 वर्ष से नीचे की, तो इसको भी रोकना आवश्यक है. तो वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट की बात तो विभिन्न राजनीतिक दल के और बुद्धिजीवी करते हैं, लेकिन जब वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट को बचाने के लिए, महिलाओं को सशक्तिकरण के लिए, महिलाओं के अच्छे स्वास्थ्य के लिए, अच्छी सुविधा के लिए अगर हम कानून
Okay. I think that's a fair point. There is obviously the right intent here as far as this is concerned. And there are always social collateral damages when you act against such social practices. The other thing also is that also recently we've seen that courts have given very different judgments, not observations, on whether an underage girl for a certain community can get married, can procreate, etc., when actually it is barred by law. So we need to get a consensus on these issues. They're creating a lot of confusion on ground. But I'll leave it at that. I do thank our guests for joining us. On the other side, the second India versus Australia test starts tomorrow in the national capital. Ahead of the match, we talk about Sir Jadeja, who was the star of the first test after coming back from injury. Is he an unheralded match winner for Team India? I get you a detailed stats-backed analysis of his impact on the Indian test team.
Indian Ocean is a very complex area because there is it's very important for almost the entire world because so much of traffic flows through it, maritime traffic. There is trade which flows through the region. It is important not only for us, it's important for the rest of the world as well. So therefore, while we are the largest navy, resident navy in the region, we have to ensure there is peace and stability because the oceans are the global commons. At any point of time, there are about 65 to 70 extra regional navies operating in this region. So it's our we as the resident naval power in this region, we keep track of all the activities that are happening. There are Chinese naval ships also operating. There are Chinese warships. There are Chinese research vessels, Chinese fishing boats in large numbers, and the prosperity at sea is dependent upon peace, tranquility, our ability to use the oceans in a free, open, and in compliance with the rule of law and so on. So that is what we try to achieve, and it is something which cannot be achieved just by one navy alone. It has to be done in cooperation and collaboration as well as coordination with all the navies in the region. So we have our outreach program, we have our activities along with the friendly foreign countries in the region. We help them, we interact with them, we train them, we facilitate capacity building, we strengthen their hands, we have multilateral exercises, all that goes on.
Also about the future plans of Indian Navy.
Future plans, we have a capability development program which takes into consideration what are the challenges that we are likely to face, and based upon that, I can tell you that we already have 43 ships under construction, out of which 41 are being built in Indian shipyards only, and we have nearly 49 ships. The AON is being processed, and so by about 2035 or so, we anticipate that we'll be about 170 to 175 ship navy, which will be quite capable of meeting the challenges that we are likely to face.
Our correspondent Akash Sharma, who spoke to the Indian Navy chief, is joining us. Akash, what is the current situation in the Indian Ocean region?
You see, Indian Ocean region, as Admiral R. Harikumar mentioned, is a challenging, facing challenging situations because, other than the resident forces, it also has 60 to 270 other naval forces. But, talking about this particular interview, Anjali, so, Admiral R. Harikumar mentioned a number of important points. And the first one was that he emphasized on the importance of maintaining peace and stability in the region. Since India is a resident force there, so we keep a track of almost all activities. And he mentioned it categorically that, there is a presence of Chinese naval ships, warships, research vessels, and fishing boats as well. So it was an important point. Other than that, we talk about Atmanirbharta. We know that how Indian government is stressing on Atmanirbharta, and in that context, Admiral R. Harikumar, said this categorically that we are at this point in time, building at least 43 ships, and other than these 43 ships, we are also, in process of signing the AON, which is the acceptance of necessity of 49 other ships. And, going with that statement, by 2035, we'll be having at least 170 to 175 ships. This is what he mentioned. So this was the other important point. So first one is, of course, the peace and, peace and stability in the Indian Ocean region that Indian Navy is focusing on. And the other one is Atmanirbharta. And, going with that program, we are also already building ships and all other things in India.
Right, Akash. Thank you for giving us all those details. Indian Navy Chief Admiral Radhakrishnan Harikumar spoke exclusively to CNN News 18's Akash Sharma about the current challenges and preparedness of Indian Navy in Indian Ocean region. The Admiral emphasized on the importance of maintaining peace and stability in the region, which is crucial for the global economy due to the large amount of traffic passing through it. He also mentioned how there is a presence of a large number of Chinese naval ships, warships, research vessels and fishing boats in the region, and how India, being a resident force, keeps a track of all the activity happening in that particular region. Regarding future plans, he revealed that the Indian Navy has a capabilities development program running and 43 ships are currently under construction, with 41 being built in Indian shipyards. Let's listen into this exclusive interview.
Is about Indian Ocean region. We know about the challenges there. China is trying to dominate the area. If you can throw some light on those challenges and also the future plans of Indian Navy.
The Indian Ocean is a very complex area because there is it's very important for almost the entire world because so much of traffic flows through it, maritime traffic. There is trade which flows through the region. It is important not only for us, it's important for the rest of the world as well. So therefore, while we are the largest navy, resident navy in the region, we have to ensure that there is peace and stability.
We all know that Ravindra Jadeja can bat. He can bat big, he can bat long. And we've known this for over 10 years. Remember, he's the first and only player to smash 3 triple tons in Ranji Trophy, and all of those came before his international test debut for India. Ahead of this Border Gavaskar series versus Australia at home, he had already smashed 17 50s and 3 test tons. I in fact remember watching him and his knock of 68 or 57 at Lord's in the series versus England in 2014. A rare test match we won in England and an even rarer win for India at Lord's, the home of cricket. His famous sword dance became all the rage after this match. In fact, I remember in the next test match, around the next test match, at a net session, I caught Stuart Broad practicing Jadeja's sword dance. That famous Jadeja sword dance came back in focus in Nagpur as Jaddu smashed another gritty and valuable late order knock. He also picked up 7 wickets with a 5-4 in the first innings to end as the deserved player of the match. That too, remember, in his comeback test after a knee operation. We all know his exploits with the ball, but isn't Jadeja underrated as an all-rounder? Take a look at what the statistics tell us. He is in fact third on the list of Indian batsmen, averaging best in positions 6 to 9. Only Lakshman and Ganguly, by the way, are above Jadeja with a minimum of 30 tests played. He's also topping the list of averages of Indian batsmen in positions 7 to 8. His average is better than those of MS Dhoni and Kapil Dev with the least number of matches played, of course, with a minimum of 30 tests played. He's also amongst the top 10 batsmen in the world at the position 7 to 8. The only one in this top 10 list worldwide who is still playing, who's a current player. And remember, this list includes the likes of Adam Gilchrist and Quinton de Kock. Let me also point out his recent form has been absolutely spectacular, and this is besides the fact that he has had to take some time off because of his knee operation. So he's actually behind only Rohit Sharma in average amongst Indians in tests since 2018. Take a look at his overall statistics. He's played 90 innings in test matches, scored nearly 2,600 runs at an average of 37 with 300s and 18 50s now. That is the kind of form he's displayed through his career. But currently, not only is he behind Rohit Sharma alone in the Indian list, he's also in the world top 10 of batsmen with the highest averages in tests since 2019. Is he not an unheralded match winner for India? Take a look at what I found when I looked into how India fares, both in India and overseas, against big teams and overall with or without Jadeja. So this is the statistics which is very telling. If you look at India's win percentage in tests, it is 64% with Jadeja in the side and 44% without him. This is of course statistics since his international test debut in December 2012. Also take a look at how we fare, for example, some of the big teams. This is India's win percentage versus Australia overall. With Jadeja whopping 70%, without him it comes down to as much as 25%. What about South Africa, for example? With him, India's win percentage against the Proteas is 71%. Without him is 29%. Against England, it remains the same. But what about when we go overseas? You would assume that this is because we play a lot of these matches in India. But you look at India's win percentage versus England in England. This is also favouring Jadeja. With him, our win percentage in England is 27%. Without him is 20%. What about in Australia? With Jadeja, our win percent is as high as 50%. Without him, it comes down by half to 25%. Let's also talk about West Indies. This is a record which is going to be very, very important for Jadeja. With him, we won all our test matches versus West Indies in West Indies. Without him, that percentage comes down to 33%. Lately, there's been a lot of debate about Ravindra Jadeja, whether he gets the due that he needs or not. I have always felt he's one of the best cricketers India has, especially in the test format. There is everything that you can depend on him for. His bowling, he has that wicket-taking knack. His batting, as I've just enumerated, he's also a very good fielder, which you need in test cricket as well. In fact, I always found it surprising that he was actually even dropped from the test squad at one time. Needless to say, he always comes back at his detractors and always proves himself. And India would need him to continue to perform in that vein exactly if they are to humiliate the Aussies at home in this Border Gavaskar Trophy.
You're watching News Epicenter with me, Maria Shakil. In the backdrop of the controversy triggered by the BBC documentary on the 2002 Gujarat riots, the Income Tax Department continues its survey into the charges of tax evasion, accusing the BBC of violating transfer pricing rules and illegally diverting profits. As the opposition calls the survey a witch hunt to stifle dissent, Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar has said the fight must continue against doctored narratives and information wars waged to run down India's rising global cloud. Addressing the Indian Information Service probationers, Dhankhar said that the public should not allow the free fall of propaganda to run down the nation's growth story. The centre has maintained its stand that the BBC documentary is misleading and a hatchet job against the Modi government, calling the IT survey a routine exercise to ensure compliance with tax rules. Meanwhile, the opposition has accused the government of hounding those who speak the truth, calling the survey harassment against those who refuse to fall in line. So is the Vice President's statement a stand against anti-India propaganda, or is it a political pitch against the critics of the Modi government?
India is on the rise. Sinister designs are there to set afloat a narrative by free fall of information.
Truth has come out. They don't tolerate the truth.